Hello, and welcome to the Joy of Cooking podcast. Each week, we set the table for a discussion about recipes and stories from the authors of The Joy of Cooking, kitchen victories and misadventures, and most importantly, what we are cooking and eating right now. We're glad you've joined us at the table today. I'm Shannon, home cook, ardent Joy of Cooking user and fan, and canned smoked trout enthusiast.
I'm Megan, co-author of the 2019 edition of The Joy of Cooking. I'm a food editor by day and avoider of dish duty by night, and I make a mean pan of cornbread.
I'm John Becker, fourth-generation co-author and steward of The Joy of Cooking, America's oldest family-run cookbook. I'm our in-house breakfast expert, and I preserve all the chilies.
What were you doing all week, Shannon? Did you make anything fun or eat anything delicious?
Well, I definitely made Samin's slow-roasted salmon this week, which is
Nice.
a huge go-to in our kitchen whenever we're feeling like, I don't know what to make. Samin's slow-roasted salmon
It's so reliable.
It's so good. And then we just paired it with pearl couscous and veggies from our CSA. We also bought a ton of oyster mushrooms from the farmer's market last week because they were on sale, and we made an oyster mushroom stir fry that was really good. The oyster mushrooms became almost like chicken, when we cooked them for a while. So that was something we both really enjoyed, and we had plenty of leftovers, so that was great.
Nice. I recently made a mushroom. It was like a Hetty McKinnon recipe, a mushroom udon dish where the mushrooms get kind of caramelized and like in soy sauce. Oh my God, it was so good.
I love oyster mushrooms.
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, I was in Seattle all week for a work thing, so I did not cook anything this week, which is weird, and just ate out every single meal, which starts out fun, and then by the end, I'm like, please, I just really want to eat stuff out of my refrigerator.
All of a sudden, you're like, oh my gosh, that's so much salt.
So much salt. But I did eat a really good slice of coconut cream pie, which is one of my top tier desserts, so I was very happy about that.
Well, yeah, since I was all alone, was really left to my own devices. Yeah, so we had some smoked pork shoulder that was left over from a party like a few months ago. So I took some of that and turned it into a red pozole. So that was really good.
I got to eat the leftovers of that yesterday, and it was really good. What was the weirdest or wackiest thing that you made as a soul? Because I feel like when you're alone, that's the moment when you get to make whatever weird thing your heart desires. Was there anything kind of funky that you made?
You're putting me on the spot. I'm a normie. What do you no, nothing weird this time. I mean, I feel like in the past I might have tried to get one by you.
You didn't have boy dinner? You didn't have something just like disgusting and weird and...
No, it was really boring. I mean, boring isn't good. I did Andrea Nguyen's soy seared tofu the night afterwards.
That's really good.
Yeah.
It's such an easy recipe too.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is so not what my husband does when I'm out of town.
What does John do?
He does I don't know, frozen buffalo wings.
See, that's what I want to hear.
And I'm like, what'd you eat? And he's like, nothing. Not red pozole, that's for sure.
Okay, well, for this episode, we would like to welcome our guest, Anna Hezel. She is a New York-based food journalist and cookbook author. Her writing has appeared in publications like the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, New York Magazine, Lucky Peach, GQ, Rolling Stone, Eater, Bon Appetit, and more. She has been an editor at Taste and Epicurious and is the author of 2 cookbooks, Lasagna and Tin to Table. Anna, welcome to the Joy of Cooking podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so exciting to be here with you all.
I'm really excited to talk to you because I love both of your books. We have one go-to recipe in the lasagna cookbook, which is the, John, what's the name of the recipe?
Oh, it's the Sunday sauce lasagna.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a go-to as in we aspire to it often.
Yeah.
It's definitely, it's a little bit of a project, but it's definitely worth every minute.
Yeah. And it's good because we freeze it.
Especially if you just want the most comforting version of lasagna with as many different kinds of meats as possible, that's the one to go to.
Yes. It freezes very, very well. We'll cut it into portions and then have it in the freezer, and it's like a weeknight savior. And then Tin to Table, your most recent cookbook, which is all about little fishes in cans, is a total delight. We actually made one of the recipes last night, the pasta con lizard.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, that's a really, really great recipe. And then honestly, I want to put those breadcrumbs on so many things.
The salty, garlicky anchovy breadcrumbs.
Yes.
Yeah, I've been scheming, definitely going on a Caesar soon, potentially other vegetable dishes. Yeah, no.
That sounds awesome. Well, thank you so much for cooking from the books.
Yeah, I love trying out new recipes, and we always have some tins of fish in the pantry. So it's really great. It's actually a really great pantry cookbook. I feel like I can usually whip up something with a tin of fish. So I think it's a really handy book. It's also very cute, but we're going to talk about that shortly. But first, I wanted to ask you, what are you up to currently? Are you working on any fun projects right now?
I am actually. I am working on a new cookbook. It's due in about a month, so I'm just low key freaking out about it at this stage. But you know what that's like.
Yeah, crunch time.
Yeah, it will come out in spring 2026, and it's all about party snacks.
Oh, that is
That's so
so
great.
perfect because that is the topic of our show this week. What a coincidence. This was not planned, by the way.
Amazing. It's top of mind. It's perfect time to talk about it.
Yes. Do you have any current cooking obsessions? It can be related to your book project or not. Anything you've been making a lot lately and loving?
So I've been really obsessing over two recipes that will be in my book that I just like really care so much about getting them perfect. One is a party mix, and it's sort of like a sweet, savory party mix. Has Chex, it has pecans, it has like butter and brown sugar and rosemary, but also like a lot of savory spices.
Mm.
And there's so many good party mixes in the world. There are good store-bought ones. I just really wanted one that I could make for any party or like make it to bring as a hostess gift places or like bring it to a friend who's sick or like, just got surgery.
Hmm.
So I just wanted a really, really solid party mix. So I've made that like it feels like 100 times in the last week. I'm like getting so tired of eating Chex cereal and pretzel sticks. But I think it's like basically there, which is really exciting. It's turning around from like so sick of eating this, can't look at it anymore, to being like, oh, that actually tastes kind of good. I'm excited about it again.
And that I feel like everyone is grateful to get a gift of party mix. I would not turn it down.
I love when people bring party mix over to the house or like, bring it to a party. I'm always excited to see party mix. And then the other thing I've been obsessing about is I wanted to have like a really good, easy chocolate chip cookie recipe in the book that you can keep frozen in balls and then just like make freshly baked cookies when you have friends over. And I've been obsessing over this because I sort of had a dream of like a pistachio chocolate chip cookie.
Oh,
But
so good.
pistachios are kind of hard because when they're warm, like when they're in a freshly baked thing, they can get kind of like chewy almost. They
Sure.
lose their crunch a little bit. So this has just been another sort of like riddle that I've been obsessing over.
I feel like pulling a warm dessert out of the oven at a party is the ultimate party trick. It's so impressive, and a warm chocolate chip cookie is just one of the best things in the world. So I'm very excited to try that recipe. Let me know if you want anyone to test it.
Yeah, you've
just
got
for
a few
Oh, thank
people
you.
who do that. I also like the idea of having them like in balls in the freezer. So if like I just want one for dessert, just like I
Exactly.
can just make one. It's fine, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe two in the toaster oven.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
Oh
don't.
yeah, yeah. Like a countertop toaster oven or like a little air fryer is
Yeah.
kind of perfect for this. If you just need like one or two cookies.
Delicious.
Very excited about that. I cannot wait to see that book. So we're going to move into our next segment, which is Wet the Palate, where we taste something delicious. And this week we are trying Szechuan pepper oil and Szechuan pepper from 50 Hertz Foods. They make a red and green Szechuan pepper oil, and they also have the peppers themselves. They are not peppercorns; they are peppers. They are not related to peppercorns. They're actually I thought this was really interesting. They're more closely related to citrus, which is you kind of can get that
Yeah.
too when you smell them. They smell very citrusy to me, especially the green ones. So let's pass around. I want to pass around the green Szechuan pepper first. Yeah, it smells so good. It smells like lemon zest. Anna, do you use Szechuan pepper often in your cooking?
Every once in a while, I like to make mapo tofu.
Mm.
Yeah, I've made a handful of recipes that use Szechuan pepper, but I haven't tried these two products that you're trying.
Yeah, the oil was kind of a new one for us. I'm trying to remember when we started using it, probably like a year ago or something.
It was a few years ago. We got some from Mala Market before we met Yao at 50 Hertz and purchased some from him. Uh, Mala Market's awesome, but 50 Hertz is, especially their green oil, is pretty fantastic.
Yeah. So I'm going to open the green Szechuan pepper oil. And I actually brought some canned, since we're talking about tinned fish, I brought some home canned albacore tuna that we just did this year to try with the green oil because the green oil really goes nicely with fish and seafood because it's a little bit lighter.
That sounds really beautiful, like sort of the fruity notes of the pepper.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's like absolutely amazing. It's so good. First of all, your tuna is wonderful. So good job.
Thank you.
But it's like it brightens up the canned tuna so much. Like it tastes like it's not like lemon juices on it. It's just so different. And then you get that sensation in the back of your throat that I really like.
Yeah, the like warming feeling.
That's amazing.
I was doing some research on the Szechuan pepper because it's not actually spicy. It's a sensation. So it's like the stimulation of the trigeminal nerve, which is the same nerve that that is kind of stimulated when you eat something with like menthol or something that's carbonated. You get like that sensation. So it does have a flavor, but that feeling of the tingliness is that stimulation of the nerve, which I think is just really cool for all the sensory science nerds.
Yeah, and it like grows because now it's like more on my tongue. Yeah, it's just fun.
It's a really fun flavor, and it goes with so many things that you wouldn't think too. Like when we went to this tasting, they were serving it on strawberries, like fresh strawberries, and it was so good on the fresh fruit. So now I want to try it kind of on everything because I think it's way more versatile than
we need a whole party of just things to put this oil on.
Yeah.
I guess that part of the origin story for Yao importing this fine oil is he was holding a dinner party for his friends and did a pasta dish that had a bunch of Parmesan and mushrooms in it. They were passing some of this oil around to garnish the pasta and just had it with some Parmesan cheese, and I can see why people were so floored. Mm-hmm. Really good.
So the red and green peppers are not from it's not like the green are immature and the red is mature. They're from two different plants, actually. And the green has like a brighter, more aromatic flavor. And then the red is more full-bodied and woodsy. So it pairs better with like tofu and red meat, sort of like red wine pairs with those things as well. So you can get a totally different effect by using the different colors peppers. But this is a favorite product of ours. We use it. We use it in mapo tofu, like Anna said. And there's also a Fuchsia Dunlop recipe called Fish Fragrant Eggplant that we use it in. It's so, so good. We're going to talk about eggplant every episode of the show somehow.
That's the goal, just to drive John a little bit crazy.
What? I have nothing against it.
50 hertz is the frequency of the tongue-tingling sensation when you experience Szechuan pepper. If you want to experience the fun of Szechuan flower pepper, visit 50hertzfoods.com. Use code TINGLYJOY, that's TINGLY, JOY20, for 20% off from now until December 31st. Check out their tingly peanuts, brittle oils, and pepper flowers. That's 50hertzfoods.com, 50hertz foods.com.
So let's talk about your most recent book, Tin to Table. Why did you decide to write about tinned fish? Is this something you were interested in for a long time, or was it a more recent obsession?
So I think I started trying to scheme to write a book about tinned fish around like 2018, 2019. And I remember when I first started talking to publishers and editors about it, everyone was sort of like, that's just like a little too weird. I don't like, it's a little too niche. for, for people to get really excited about. And then a couple of years later in 2020, I just started noticing people buying and cooking with tin fish so much more. I think like with the pandemic and the lockdown, people were stuck at home. So they were sort of like going to the internet to buy a lot of ingredients. And this was like a shelf stable protein that people could buy that also felt a little bit fun. And you sort of get to almost like travel vicariously through the product if you're buying Portuguese or Spanish tins, or tins from anywhere else in the world. So I think I just started to see this momentum growing around tin fish. But at the same time, it's like a really sort of intimidating category of food to get into for the first time because there's so much out there. There's so many species. There's so many preparations for those species, so many brands, and it can just be like really overwhelming and intimidating, I think. So I wanted to sort of like help demystify that and make that friendlier and more accessible for people who are just interested in like buying, collecting, cooking with tin fish, all those things.
Yeah. And another thing that I've noticed when I'm buying tinned fish is that some of the tins are very, very expensive, which is not necessarily something I expected initially. Like I think of the just tinned sardines as this kind of everyday lunch staple, and they're really affordable, but then you can get some really high end tins of fish. And I started to wonder, is it worth it? I was really curious, like I want to try, but yeah, is it worth it?
Yeah, I mean, so tin fish, there's sort of like this weird arbitrary pricing that has a little bit to do with like sort of obsolete American tariffs put on imported goods that were sort of like originally instated to protect the American fishing industry. But now I think like a lot of people, like I like to buy local seafood when I can, but also like Spanish sardines sometimes because they do something that I think like American fresh seafood isn't doing. But a lot of those products still just have like a really dramatic markup because they're being imported. So I think like sometimes the price doesn't like perfectly match up with quality, but you're also like sometimes paying for just like a nicer olive oil that they're packed in, or like for instance, like anchovies, I will sometimes spend like $15 on a can of anchovies, which I know like is totally insane to some people, but I love buying them from a company where like there's all this sort of intricate handiwork that's gone into it, and they're packed by hand. And some companies even will put like a little piece of paper inside the can that has the name of the person who packed that can. And so, yeah, so I will sort of like, I'll rationalize spending $15 on a can of fish every once in a while. But I do think there are some really extravagant cans that are maybe not worth it for most people for everyday eating and yeah, for everyday use.
Well, I feel like with anchovies in particular, there's a good value proposition, even if it is a little more expensive than you would expect. Just because you don't necessarily need a ton of anchovies for every single time you want to use it.
Yeah, that's so true. There's also, I mean, I think a lot of people don't realize that with anchovies, there's a really long preparation process that goes into them. Like they bring in the fresh fish, they pack them in like wooden barrels with a ton of salt, and then they just cure them in salt for months, like 6 months sometimes. And that's how they sort of develop that like really, really salty umami kind of Parmesan flavor just from that aging. And then even after that whole curing process, they have to be cleaned, gutted, rinsed, and then filleted and packed in olive oil usually. So it's kind of an elaborate process that you're paying for. So to me, it's like for a really good can, I have no problem spending $15.
Yeah, you can definitely get a sense for the at least a fraction of the work that's involved, the painstaking work that's involved if you get the salt packed. Those can be a little bit difficult to fillet.
Yeah, we will get the big cans of anchovies packed in salt, and then go through the process of cleaning them and then packing them in olive oil ourselves, because the texture of the canned ones in the salt is so good. Like they're just really firm and especially delicious.
Yeah, totally. A lot of restaurants do that also. I think like both because the texture is really fresh and firm, and then also you get to choose what olive oil you want to use, which can be nice. You can sort of like choose one that you like.
Yeah, and speaking of anchovies, one thing I learned from your book is that anchovies, even in little tins, should be refrigerated, not kept on the shelf.
Yeah, I usually refrigerate them. I mean, this is like a little bit, there's some people who say it's no problem to keep them at room temperature, but yeah, since anchovies are weirdly one of the tin seafoods that's not cooked before it goes in the can, it's just like a raw fish cured in salt. It's considered semi-preserved.
Hmm.
So basically over time, when that can is sort of sitting on your shelf, especially if your kitchen or your home gets like a little bit warmer, the fish can actually sort of like break down inside of the can and get kind of like mushy or like grainy, sort of like some of the unpleasant textures that I associate with anchovies when they're not as good as they could be.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I like to stick mine in the fridge just because it's like a little extra insurance against them breaking down and becoming kind of gross.
I mean, this might be sacrilegious, but yeah, what's your opinion on anchovy paste? Like the tubes, just because they are so convenient. But no, Nepal.
They are really convenient, but I feel like they always use like the grossest anchovies to make the paste.
Yeah.
So especially like if I'm using enough anchovy in something that I like want that convenience, usually it's because like the dish has a lot of anchovy in it. So I guess I just like usually find myself opening up a can or like one of those little jars that you can reseal and just fish out like one anchovy at a time.
And they're so easy to make into a paste yourself. Like,
Okay, fine. I'm ashamed.
Come on, John.
I'm blushing. So sorry.
I don't mean to yuck your yum. You can keep buying the tubes of the paste.
Anna, what is your current favorite tin of fish?
Ooh, okay. So I sort of have like a desert island tin, which is the Nuri. It's a Portuguese brand, and they have just I think it's called sardines and spiced oil.
Mm.
And it's just like a really fatty, meaty, big Portuguese sardine in an oil that's like really beautifully spiced. It's like there's a little piri piri. I think there's some clove in there, maybe a bay leaf. It just has like a really lovely red, slightly spicy oil.
Mm. I feel like we have a can. Do we have a tin of the nori at home?
We have in the past. I think we ate them all.
Okay.
There's another brand that same cannery sells under, and I can't remember the name of it.
Pinheisch.
Yeah, that's right. Right. Yeah, they're really good. I feel like that was one of the gateway sardines that we've enjoyed. I think the first one that was truly like, okay, we need to explore this more was the Angelo Perotti.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, yeah, with I think that the ones that they pack with the chili, that was, for me at least.
The yellow box.
Yeah.
I can see the yellow box. Yeah.
This is random, but a few friends of mine, they know that I like tinned fish, but they just recently started selling tinned calamari at Trader Joe's. So some friends of mine are like getting that tin of calamari because it's cheap, right? Like it's easy to just pick up when you're at Trader Joe's buying your other stuff. What would you recommend to use, like, for those friends of mine who are just trying to get into it, tinned calamari for?
Ooh, I've used tin calamari for paella before because it's so hard to find. Like in grocery stores in New York, it's hard to buy actual fresh calamari in small quantities. So it's kind of perfect if you're like throwing in a few different kinds of seafood into a paella. Also, I feel like just like a garlicky pasta with canned calamari would be really good.
I did not know that they were selling that at Trader Joe's, so I'm gonna have to check that out.
I think it's brand new. I'm heading there after this, so
their smoked trout is really good.
Their
too.
smoked trout is really, really good. I eat it quite often for lunch.
Yeah. Speaking of kind of more budget tins, do you have a favorite budget tin of fish?
I like King Oscar sardines as just like they make some that are packed in olive oil that are still like pretty affordable. Yeah, and the Trader Joe's smoked trout I also really like. Also Cole's, there's a brand Cole's Cole. And their smoked trout and smoked salmon are both really nice.
Something to check out. Before we move on to our weekly topic, I also wanted to just talk about the design of your book, Tin to Table, because it is such a beautiful book, and we'll link to it in the show notes so everyone can see it, and you should buy a copy because it's beautiful and lovely. And it's also a really great gift book because it has like a smaller trim size, just like a smaller dimensions. But I love the design because it's got the rounded corners and then the silver accents, which make it look like kind of like a tin of fish. And it's just a very sweet design. Like, how much were you involved with the design process of the book?
Oh, thank you so much for saying that. Yeah, I love the design. The design is by Lizzie Vaughn, who's an art director at Chronicle Books, which is my publisher. And she and I were working together really closely from sort of like the moment I pitched the book, just like sharing, like I would share sort of archival images of old like tin designs with her, or just like send little illustrations as I found them. And she just was so creative about turning it into a book design. I also really love the photography of Chelsea Craig, which is in the book. I think she also just like did such a great job of picking up those sort of like classic colors and textures that are on a lot of the can designs and bringing that in the photography, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, the photos are super fun, and I love that there's a blend of photography and illustration in the book. I love a good illustrated cookbook.
I also really like the binding. I know it's such like a weird thing, but for cookbooks, I just feel like it's so nice when you open it up and it stays open. And this one feels solid and it stays open to the page that you want.
Yeah, it has the really nice sewn binding, which does lay flat, and that is such a gift when you're using it in the kitchen. Yeah, so good job, everyone who worked on this book.
Thank you so much. I'll let the team at Chronicle Books know that you appreciated that.
Awesome. And one question I should have asked at the beginning of this interview segment, but what is your relationship with the Joy of Cooking cookbook? Is it a book that you grew up with or just heard of or have never used? Any answer is acceptable.
Yeah. Okay. So I actually, when I was invited to come on the podcast, I hit up my family group chat and just said like, hey, remind me, like, what are some of the things that we have cooked over the years? Because I grew up with this book sort of being like constantly at hand in the kitchen. Anytime I was a little kid and just like curious about how a particular kind of cake was made, or just like how to make, stuffing for Thanksgiving. Like this was the book that I went to. But I texted my family group chat and they reminded me that we used to always make the 1, 2, 3, 4 cake.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember that one.
Which I think it's called 1, 2, 3, 4 because of like the formula of like how much flour, milk, eggs. I can't remember the exact breakdown, but it's like a really clever kind of like cake recipe build.
Yeah, it's a really easy way to remember the recipe. So, like, instead of a pound cake with equal parts, it's, and I also can't remember what those ingredients, like, what are the, I feel like it's,
we're not prepared.
Yeah, we're not prepared.
No, I mean, the joy of cooking has more than, there are thousands of recipes. I can't even imagine how you would remember every single one.
Oh my, yeah. No, we love getting the "What's your favorite recipe?" question, especially.
Oh my gosh.
Like, you got to narrow it down a little more than that.
Yeah. But my mom reminded me there's a couscous salad in the joy of cooking that has like chopped up bell peppers and dried apricots and raisins and like a lime juice dressing. And that couscous salad was just at like every party we had growing up. Like my family has made that for hundreds and hundreds of people over the years. It's crazy.
Yeah, we're gonna have to revisit that one.
I know. I feel like that sounds like a 1997
for
recipe.
Sure.
But I feel like I think it was in the 2006 edition as well. Honestly, yeah, again, it's hard. I need the book right in front of me to look it up.
Was it with a big couscous?
No, I don't think so. I think it's with like the
standard.
the tiny couscous.
Nice.
Well,
We're gonna look that up later and maybe make that for our next gathering, our next party.
Yeah, it's really good. It goes with everything, like grilled meats pair really nicely with it. Yeah, it's great. And okay, I also remembered that the first time I ever made a hot fudge sauce as a kid was from the Joy of Cooking recipe.
Heck yes.
It's so good. And it's like so exciting as a like 8 or 9-year-old to realize that you can just like make that.
Yeah.
Kind of a revelation.
The keys to the kingdom.
Yeah, this is what we dream of enabling.
It is that is one of those recipes though that is a little like magic, because you put the ingredients in a pot and you think there's no way this is going to make a hot fudge sauce, and then it just turns, and you boil it. Like, you have to actually boil it hard, and it just turns this glossy, beautiful, like the hot fudge sauce that you know from an ice cream shop. It's exactly like that. It is so good. Thank you for reminding me that recipe exists. I'm going to make some right away.
Yeah, it's so good. We used to, when I was a kid, we would always have hot fudge Sundays on New Year's Eve. And we would like invite like everyone in the neighborhood came over, aunts and uncles and cousins came over, and we'd have a big hot fudge Sunday party.
I love that.
So I remember especially that hot fudge sauce is really good with peppermint ice cream as like a sort of wintry kind of Christmas, New Year's treat.
Oh wow, you're speaking Megan's language. That is a classic combination for Megan.
Yeah, I love them. I'm a mint chocolate person. I know that is a little controversial sometimes, but I think it's a brilliant. I just think it's a brilliant pairing.
I agree.
So now we're going to talk about our weekly topic, which is party food. But before we get into party food more broadly, we are going to answer a question from our hotline.
Hi, this is Jillian, and this message is for the Joy of Cooking podcast. I am calling with a cooking conundrum. I need help because I had a party last weekend and I have 3 cups of sour cream left over. Can you give me ideas to use up 3 cups of sour cream in any kind of recipes over the next week? Thank you.
Okay, so Jillian needs to use 3 cups of sour cream that she has left over from a party. Go.
Well, it's not, I mean, I love sour cream, so that's not a problem for me. But I like using just like dollops in soup. I think it's really good because it adds a creaminess. So we just made corn chowder last night and I didn't have any sour cream. But guess what could have been like way better with a dollop of sour cream is that corn chowder. That's something that came to mind other than just like, dipping whatever I have on hand into it.
Well, yeah, if we're just trying to use a dollop at a time, borscht obviously came to mind.
Yeah, borscht. We're getting into the soup season, so it's time to start making borscht.
But we did actually find some ways to use like a fairly large quantity at once. What is it? The fruit brulee recipe?
Yeah, so there's a recipe in Joy called fruit brulee. It's been there since the 60s. You looked it up.
I did, and yet it is eluding me. It's been around for a
It's
while.
been around for a while. Fruit brulee. It's a really, really simple dessert, and it sounds kind of funky, but it's very good. I highly recommend. Where you take whatever fresh fruit you have. Berries are really good. So, like raspberries are my favorite, but any kind of berry like that. You put the berries in a baking dish, a broiler proof baking dish, and then you mix together 1.5 cups of sour cream and vanilla, and then spread that on top. So it's totally coating the fruit. And then you sprinkle a bunch of brown sugar on top. And then you broil it in the oven until the sugar melts and caramelizes.
And it's about like a 1-to-1 sour cream to brown sugar ratio we're talking.
Wow.
So it is quite, yeah, there's a lot of caramelization going on.
Yeah, but that's a really good way to use up a lot of sour cream in one fell swoop, which I feel like you could do, we can either go with like use as much sour cream as possible in as few recipes as possible, or just start adding it to everything over like a week to use it all up.
Yeah.
Anna, do you have any sour cream suggestions?
Well, first of all, fruit brulee sounds so good. That sounds like a thing that would be hard to invent. Like I'm sort of curious about the genesis of that, but it sounds so good to me. And just like a charming concept. Just like those three ingredients together. Beautiful.
I was reading that some sources call it Russian gratin. So more of still a mystery. I'll have to do some more digging.
Yeah.
Amazing. So I have a recipe in Tinted Table, which is for a smoked trout dip, which uses canned smoked trout, which, as we mentioned, easy to get at Trader Joe's. And then also, and the dairy, I call for a mix of cream cheese and creme fraiche, just because I really like the texture of like that combo. But I've done it just like with sour cream or all cream cheese or all creme fraiche. So it's kind of flexible. So I think that the caller should make a smoked trout dip with at least a cup of the sour cream, just with canned trout, sour cream, a little minced shallot, a little lemon juice, black pepper. And then I think that the caller should also make just like a really good coffee cake.
Yeah, that sounds so good right
Yeah.
now. I'm just getting towards dinner time, so I'm like, oh, it all sounds so good.
Or like some kind of snacking cake that still tastes good a couple days later, that you just like want to have around to grab a little slice here and there.
Yeah, I love that idea.
My great grandmother Irma, she had anticipated these kinds of questions, and I found out looking at the older editions that like up until the 1951 edition, she actually had like an entire list of what she called leftover food suggestions, like in the back of Joy, and it included like I want to say maybe 25 uses for excess sour cream. Just thought it was interesting that Irma was definitely anticipating Jillian's question. But yeah,
Like 70 years ago.
yeah, 70 years ago.
Any good suggestions from there, or is it all like very specific things?
Well, there's like a grandmother's apple cake that we've tested in the past, and it's actually like it's still in Joy, but it's no longer called grandmother's apple cake. It's called something like sour cream souffle cake cocaine.
Yeah, sour cream apple souffle cake. It's got a
Right.
mouthful of a name.
Yeah, it's like it really does kind of defy like genre conventions as far as baked goods go. I remember it being really, really good.
It's really good.
I looked it up. It doesn't use too much sour cream, but
it is apple season, so it
true,
feels
very true.
on point.
Let's see what else. Donuts with sour cream. That's intriguing.
Man, but I don't want to make donuts.
A sour cream pie. I wonder. Yeah, there are no page numbers in this list, of course. God, Irma.
Yeah, that's the limitation of that. What about John? Talk a little bit about Marion Becker's favorite dessert.
Yeah, so again, not something that would get rid of a ton of sour cream, but she just loved. Well, so she was allergic to strawberries, but she loves strawberries. You know, it's a horrible, horrible predicament to be in. But she would her favorite way to eat these things that would make make her break out. I don't even know what would happen after she ate the strawberries, but she would dip them in sour cream and then in brown sugar, like fruit brulee, but just one at a time.
Yeah, it's really good too. And it's one of those things that is so simple that at first I didn't think it was going to be any good. But when you start eating them, you kind of can't stop eating them because it's so snackable. And it's also fun to get to dip the strawberries into the sugar and the sour cream.
And the texture is probably really fun.
Yeah, the texture is really good.
Yeah, even out of season. I mean, please do not buy strawberries out of season, but if you do, you should do this.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about party food more broadly. So, Anna, how do you like to serve tinned fish at parties?
I love to incorporate it into a dip, like the smoked trout dip. Also easy to do that with like a good smoked salmon, or other like smoky sort of tinned seafoods. But I also really like to just like open a bunch of tins and set them out sort of like you would like cheese or charcuterie, with some pickles and crudité and bread and butter, and just encourage people to try things. Because it's sort of like a nice low stakes way. If you're at a party and you're only going to try a bite of something, it's kind of a cool way to just like try tinned mussels for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And I also really like making gildas, which are like a classic Spanish pincho, which is just like a little kind of like finger food drinking snack. And you just take a little like cocktail pick, little tiny skewer, and add like a green olive, an anchovy, and a pipara, which is a kind of like pickled pepper that's used in a lot of Spanish cooking. And those are just like really cute little dainty bites, and you can like arrange them in a cute way on a tray. And it's sort of like a nice way to eat anchovies and all of those things without getting too messy or without needing like plates and forks.
Yeah, that sounds so good. It makes me want to serve that with a martini or something.
Yes, it's great with a martini.
I think pushing people to try tinned fish in that like kind of a setting is really fun too. Because I think there's maybe, I don't know how many people grew up eating it necessarily, unless it was like, I don't know, canned tuna.
Canned tuna,
yeah. So if it's just available for people to try little bits here and there, I think that gets people out of their comfort zone a little bit.
Yeah, it seems way more accessible if you're not sure if you want to buy the whole tin, but you can try it and see if you like it.
And then you fall in love with it.
Yeah.
Totally. There's also kind of like a nice peer pressure in a party setting where like you can put something that's like a little weird out there, and people will sort of like egg each other on. It's kind of fun.
I feel like I don't think it's very weird, but I love radishes with butter and sea salt. And when I put that out, sometimes people are like, "What? What is this?" And I'm like, "No, it's so good. Just eat it."
Yeah, just try it.
Yeah, peer pressure.
Shannon, what do you like to do for parties? What kind of stuff do you like to serve?
I overserve at every party. You've been to my parties. It depends, of course, on what kind of party. I just had a brunch, like flower arranging thing yesterday, so it was a big mix of things. But I really like I said, radishes with butter and sea salt is a big one for me. Any kind of dips, like I always try to make my party appetizers vegan or vegetarian friendly. Even though I am neither, I think it's really important to think about that when and just about people's like dietary restrictions in general, and plating as well. Like make sure you're plating it thoughtfully, both beautifully and again with a dietary restriction aspect involved. Mixes of things. I'm more of a savory person, but I know a lot of people like sweet stuff. So I always try to like offer a little bit of everything, and then of course cheese.
Yeah,
a lot of
cheese
cheese
has to be there.
Yeah. What about you guys?
We also overserve. I feel like we're talking about planning a party and we just keep adding and adding and adding. I blame my grandparents because both my grandmothers were always cooking for large crowds of people. And so I'm just used to like a table that is totally loaded with food is very normal to me. And if there's not a table loaded with food, I'm like, I don't think I have enough for the 4 people coming over to my house. But I will always make pretty much always make a pan of cornbread and then have some like honey butter or maple butter or something on the table because I feel like at least here in the Pacific Northwest, you don't see cornbread as much as I would like. And
Yeah,
it's
you
one
don't.
of my favorite foods ever. And so a party's a really good chance to just let people have cornbread and it's fun for me to make it. So I like doing that. And then we'll do like dips, a mixture of like creamy things and crunchy things. So we'll do like whipped feta and then have pita chips and vegetables. We always do baba ganoush. We're talking about eggplant again. It's the subject of every episode. And then like I'll do like a puff pastry tart. So like just puff pastry with some kind of vegetable and like spreadable cheese. It's so easy and everyone really loves it and it always looks impressive too.
Yeah, you got to make sure it looks pretty.
Yeah, exactly. People are taking photos.
I feel like, occasionally we'll veer towards, Southern style dips and spreads too with the pimento cheese.
Yeah, pimento cheese.
Oh, delicious.
A queen among spreads.
Yes, 100%.
If you have a topic, ingredient, or joy story to share, call our hotline at 503-395-8858. Leave us a message or send us a text. We would love to hear from you. And next week's topic comes from our caller.
We got a text call this time from Neha. So it's not a voice, it is a text. And it will be next week's topic. It's looking to be an abundant chanterelle hunting season. What is the best way to prepare chanterelles for freezing or future use?
That's a really good question. And I'm very excited about chanterelle season.
Yes.
So we will answer that question in our next episode. What are all of you excited about in the week to come, food-wise? Are you going out anywhere? Are you making anything fun in the CSA box this week?
I have 2 chili preservation projects underway right now, so I'm excited to see those to fruition. I just smoked some red jalapenos, and they are currently in the dehydrator, so we're going to be stocked up on chipotles here pretty soon, some morita-style chipotles, and then also found some red serrano chilies at the market, and so we spent a bit of time stemming and getting the seeds out of them without totally destroying them, and so they get salted overnight. Then they get soaked in boiling white wine vinegar overnight, and then tomorrow they get dried a little bit, and then they get confit, I guess is what you would call it, in olive oil. And that's my take on Calabrian style chilies, just because red serranos are pretty much all I have that's close to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was a while where we could get a magical time when we could get actual Calabrian chilies from a farmer, and sadly all their seeds were lost in a fire. And so we are now using red serranos, but they're really, really good. And that's one of those really fun projects because you get not just the peppers, but then you also have the oil, the spicy oil, and you have the vinegar that they soaked in.
The chili and cheese vinegar is a sleeper hit, especially just thinking about putting them on a mess of collards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so good.
What about you, Anna?
This week I'm really working on a recipe for the book that the concept is sort of like a Spanish croquette meets clam chowder.
Ooh.
And I basically want to create a croquette that like you bite into it and it tastes like chowder. Because basically like croquettes generally are like a really nicely seasoned bechamel sauce with like sometimes little bits of Serrano ham, for instance. But I'm using canned clams, and I just want like a really savory, delicious, creamy kind of bechamel that's fried and crispy on the outside. We'll see if it works. We'll see if it makes it into the book.
Are you
But that's
also
something I'm excited to cook.
Are you also going for like the other chowder components, like a little bit of potato and a little bit of bacon in there as well, or just kind of try to stick with the clam?
I'm kind of sticking with the clam. It's sort of like I'm building the bechamel with a little bit of celery and onion to get the like savory flavors building. But because the bechamel has so much starch, I decided to skip the potato.
Sure.
So yeah, we'll see if it works.
Well, I'm excited to get an update on that one. That sounds delicious.
Thank you.
Anna, where can people find your books?
You can find To the Table at rainbowtomatoesgarden.com, caputos.com, d'Espagnabrandfoods.com, portugaliamarketplace.com, or basically anywhere else you would buy books. Your local favorite bookstore. Ask them if they have it.
And where can listeners follow you?
I'm on Instagram at A Hezel.
Thanks for listening to the Joy of Cooking podcast. Before we go, show some love for your favorite podcast by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts and iTunes. Follow us on Instagram at The Joy of Cooking. Stay tuned for next week, where we will tackle mushrooms. Call in with questions, hopes, history, or where you find joy in the kitchen. Our number is 503-395-8858. That's 503-395-8858.
And we could not do this without our fantastic team at the Joy of Creation production house. Thank you to Kayleen Veach, our production coordinator, Haley Bowers, our audio engineer, and Sarah Marshall, our producer.